Hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C Podcast, coming to you from O3C Games. I don't really know who we are anymore, to be honest. My name is Jonathan Dunn. And you're Chris Dow.
Last time I checked, and I believe I've been told that this is a video games podcast. Yeah.
Chris, we're back. Hey, you know what? It's the 1st of April. Do you remember the best episode of the podcast we ever did?
Yeah, we rode that high in our first year, and we never really never really climbed
absolutely.
again.
If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to our April Fool's special from literally 50 years ago, where me and Chris and Minty just made up stupid games to talk about and pretended that they featured in our top 100 video games of all time lists. It was a lot of fun. And I think about it often.
Every April 1st, certainly.
Oh, certainly then, yeah. And let's be honest, never aside from that. But spring has sprung, he says, with a gale force storm blowing outside.
It's horrible. It's horrible today.
What is this? Games, Chris. What's been happening? I tell you what. Do you want a couple of little headlines from me before we
like a little
dive
bit
into
of seasoning on top?
Yeah, just a little soupçon. The Switch 2 has got a really, really nice little feature and update.
Yes.
It's the long wanted. Well, they're calling it handheld boost mode, which basically plays Switch 1 games in docked mode when you're playing them in handheld on Switch 2. Which is really great because pretty much all Switch games now run in TP in handheld and look lovely and crisp on the Switch 2 screen. And whilst this is a much needed feature, I am surprised at the timing of its release because it sort of coincides with the Switch 2 upgrade pack for Super Mario Bros. Wonder.
Yeah.
And for me, the big reason why I've grabbed any of the Switch 2 upgrade packs is to play them in 1080p in handheld, so they don't look all smudgy and wonkily inaccurately upscaled, And now we've got that feature. I'm definitely not going to buy the Mario Wonder upgrade pack. I don't want the new content. I don't care about it running in 4K in docked mode, so saved $16.99 there.
Thanks, Nintendo.
Yeah, and I put actually $16.99 towards a Switch 1 game that I've been wanting to play for a little while, which is Tiny Bookshop, which was featured on the latest Indie Direct. What?
Every time you say tiny in the Tiny Turnip voice.
I know. Tiny Turnip. Tiny Bookshop. It's all right.
Great.
It's quite nice. You run a little bookshop. It's quite cozy and cute. I don't know how much depth there is. It doesn't appear to be a lot at the moment, but it looks really nice. So that's good. And I picked out a couple of other Switch 1 games that I thought, you know what? Let's give this another go. Like Metroid Dread. I thought, let's see how that plays. Looks wonderful. Absolutely brilliant. So that's queued up to replay at some point. You know what? See if you can guess what game I have been playing, which is in my Switch 1 library.
Binding of Isaac?
No. You won't
Switch...
get it because it's not even niche. It's just so forgotten. Do you remember the arcadey Lara Croft games that came out?
Yeah.
Like the isometric.
What were they called? Were they just called the Lara Croft Adventures?
And the Guardian of Light,
and
then Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris, I think.
Yes, I think that was it.
Anyway, they got a little Switch 1 release as a double pack at some point to zero fanfare, but I bought it and I've been playing that. And the first one anyway. And it plays in 1080p, which is nice. It still looks like it's running at about 20 frames per second, which is a shame because it'd be nice if it was silky smooth. But they're just really, really cool games, and I wish somebody else had them so I could play co-op because I think that would be a lot of fun, and I've never been able to do that. But there we go.
That is, believe it or not, a game I never picked up. I own a lot of stuff. It did, I think, get a limited print release, like a physical release, but it was after I'd kind of really slowed down on my, obsessive buying. So it didn't make the grade. Maybe one day. Maybe.
Probably not. Last little thing I did was there was an indie Direct, wasn't there? Did we
Yeah,
talk about
some
that
point.
last month? Has that happened? Who knows? I don't know.
We talked about something.
We talked about something, didn't we? There was a game that was announced and then shadow dropped called Mini Shoot Adventures, and I bought it and I played it, and it was really, really nice. If you haven't seen it, it's essentially a top-down Zelda game, but with like shoot 'em up, like almost like bullet hell mechanics. So you pilot a little spaceship around and gather upgrades and powers and explore this little world, solve puzzles, find secrets, do like sort of dungeon-y things, beat bosses. And it's just really, really good. It's not overlong. It's not overly simple, but it's perfectly executed, very satisfying. Only a few hours long, but it just boils down that sort of Zelda experience into something really, really nice and palatable. So yeah, big recommend for me, that one, Mini Shoot Adventures. Chris, what have you played?
Less than I would have liked. And I wanted to explain some of that. I thought I should give some context for my life a bit. It is now basically April. It is April as this podcast is going out, but through the magic of cinema, it is not quite April as we record. But I have yet to beat a game in 2026. And I have taken a level of personal pride in beating at least 52 games each calendar year for about 8 years now, I think. But I really do think that train has finally left the station on that particular streak for this year. It's not that I'm not playing games or at least trying to play games, but there are lots of things happening in Satellite at the moment that I felt it was worth sharing, just in case people listening start thinking, why is he so fucking boring all of a sudden? Because I guess, some people might want to know what I play. Firstly, as part of that, a word on what I like to call teacher brain. Something which I genuinely don't think anyone really understands or appreciates, if not in education themselves. Like most jobs in any sector, any industry, you've got busy periods, you've got fallow periods, but most importantly, you have punctuation. So whether you're working kind of a minimum wage job at a shop where you have punctuation at the exact moment you leave the door, like work does not exist unless you're in it, or if you're doing like an office job or an admin job, then punctuation is kind of tied to like you'll do a project, you have a focus where it's all hands on deck for a while and then the deadline passes and you regroup a bit. Most jobs fit somewhere in that kind of way, but teaching is a consistent string of layered deadlines from September the 1st right through to the following summer break. And the 5-ish weeks in the summer is like your golden time because it's the only bit where you genuinely get to forget what you do. But for the rest of the year, like whether it's the evening, whether it's a weekend, whether it's the half term, there's always a portion of your brain that's keyed into like outstanding school related tasks or student needs. It's just that bit is never zero. And when I was first training, it was such a fight to switch that off. And I have really vivid and quite unpleasant memories of completing like a day at a school placement, coming home, doing 3 or 4 hours of prep or planning and college work ready for the next day, and then sitting down in bed and picking up, I think, a little GBA SP I had at the time and thinking, I'm going to play Warrior Land 2. Love that game. I'm going to play Warrior Land 2. And I played it for 10 minutes. And then I remember talking myself out of being allowed to have fun and instead just get my laptop out and tweaking slides instead for the next day. And it took such a long time to reshape the part of my brain to allow fun in again, because your brain can't just be work. But at least at that stage, it was very hard to find that space. And, that is something that happens to us as teachers. Now, I'm sharing this anecdote, not necessarily because I've fallen back into the no fun mindset again, although school is ever present. The longer you work in education, the more your wider responsibilities and workload grows, but rather because I'm experiencing a similar feeling regarding a few other things happening in my life presently. And I am very excited to more publicly share, because Jonathan Dunn knows this information.
Yeah.
Georgia, my partner, and I are expecting a baby in the summer. And I feel like joyous and I feel scared, obviously. And I am filled with love and emotion, but also deep responsibility and fear, because they all come hand in hand. I feel simultaneously prepared and unprepared for the things that I know about, and then unprepared and really unprepared for things that I don't. And this has had this effect that once again, whether I'm trying to play Warrior Land 2 or anything, to be honest, I'm experiencing these unresolvable feelings that I ought to be doing something at all times, even when there is nothing to presently do. I can't get out of it. Like, I am fully aware that I'm not the only man to wait or to have a baby. No, I'm not that self-centered. I know that I know that every single parent or parent to be on the planet has to balance these feelings. And I also know that, like with my teaching, where I found ways to compartmentalize and prioritize to allow me kind of me time, that my brain is malleable enough to hopefully and eventually let me organize my thoughts to allow all these bits of me to kind of coexist semi-peacefully. When I was doing my teacher training, my curriculum advisor would espouse this approach to education that he called the artist-teacher model. And at its most basic, he argued that you couldn't be an effective arts educator if you yourself weren't invested in some way in like a personal practice. You had to be doing something arty yourself to be effective at, being able to teach it. Although I'm not making like visual art in the same way I once was, I do make music every day. I make exemplars for my classes. I write and produce this podcast alongside you. Like, I'm doing creative things. And what I think his model failed to really set me up for, though, was the idea of like an artist teacher human model, where you're prepared to properly set up the neural pathways that are in your brain to create and to teach and also to exist and enjoy existence and the wider things that come with just being human, like being a person. And I think that's the real game that I'm aiming to figure out this year and I guess ever onwards now, I guess. In terms of a few games that I've tried to play, just to swing this almost back to a monologue properly befitting of a professional games podcast, I've been doing the odd run of Balatro because it's addictive qualities and stellar music. I can't get enough of the music. The one track I've never grown bored of. It helps me focus on a singular experience for a little longer because it's very addictive. You can't get out that easily once you're in. And that means that I've actually sat down and played for 45 minutes or something like that, where I've had kind of a semi-successful run. I've continued to play small rounds of easy come, easy golf because it is, as I explained last month, aimed at a pick up and play mobile audience. So that kind of suits me at the moment. Interestingly, in dipping in each day, I also found out just a few days ago that around Christmas time, it actually had a 60 frames per second toggle added, buried in the menu. So last month when I was whinging that it didn't have 60 frames a second, it's there all along. And it's specifically for the Switch 2. Like, it can't hit that on the Switch, but it does on the Switch 2.
Does it make a big difference?
It took me a while to readjust because I was then so used to playing without it. But now I'm kind of back in, and it basically makes one of my biggest criticisms of last month bunk. So, but it's a good game, it's fine. Lumines 2 got an achievement set on retro achievements after a big long wait, and I had very grand intentions to try and get stuck into that because I thought, okay, arranging blocks, that'll help my brain, that's what I do well. But I found that because I'm quite good at Lumines, every round takes well over an hour. Like, this never is shorter than that, and that's not really what I'm after at the moment. So I haven't really got stuck in properly. Although I'm not buying games with the veracity I used to, again, hello, baby. I do still keep up with Evercade releases because they're quite spread out across the year. I recently got the excellent Turrican collection that groups together pretty much all the Turrican releases from the Amiga to the ports for the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. Like, it's a good little package.
Those are the Turok fighting games, yeah?
Yeah, if you want. But I've kind of liked playing those in that I knew of them. I never really given them much of a go. And having them all in one place, you can just, pick up and play, have a little blast. I'm not very good at them because they're very hard and they are very much like the type of things that were releasing on home computers in Europe in the 90s. So they are very, very difficult. And I have a brain filled with scrambled eggs. So I can't retain any information on how to get good, but there's that. I picked up the home version of Blippo Plus in the Steam sale, and I've enjoyed skimming the channels in Technicolor. What's quite nice about this that I don't think they really publicised was it features a kind of progression that the Playdate version didn't, in that content watched is logged. So for anyone that felt the Playdate version was too open-ended and goalless, maybe this port is for you, because it at least says when you've got to the end of a set of television, when the next week has started, the next fictional week of content. It's not like just waiting for the live stream to start again like it was on the Playdate.
Yeah.
I tried to play a game called Gloomhaven on the Switch, which is a pretty hardcore turn-based role-playing strategy game.
Yeah,
that I think came from a board game. Yeah. I genuinely think its rules are nigh on impossible to grasp if you weren't burst like inside a Settlers of Catan box. Like, it's so hard. There's like the tutorials, which ostensibly should just be click the button you're told to do and you will win, so you understand how something works. Consistently failed 5-6 times before it would let me pass. So that's back on the shelf.
Yeah, you need Andy, don't you?
Yeah. And finally, inspired by the recent release of its third entry, I gave the original Monster Hunter Stories a quick go as well.
Yes.
Because I had that on the Switch.
Yeah.
I never played this on the 3DS. I've now done, a couple hours of like the early game tutorial stuff. I might not play it on the Switch either. But for anyone who wants a kind of Pokemon style RPG experience in the Monster Hunter world, fill your boots, I guess, because it feels very much like the sort of Monster Hunter stuff I remember from the small bits of time I played those games before. So at least in terms of world building and everything else, it seems to fit.
I never played the first one. I loved the second one. It was brilliant. Really good sort of fusion.
Yeah, might be worth a play then. There is one final game I'll talk about in a bit, but crucially, I've played more of that because I've been playing it with Georgia. Otherwise, it's been quite a slow month. So no completions, no real progress, just a string of attempts to reconfigure my brain for now and for next, I suppose. I assume you have played one particular game, which may come up now. Perhaps?
I've played two particular games. They're not similar at all, but I'm going to talk about one straight off the bat because it's the one I'm also playing at the moment. That is
Pokopia?
Resident Evil Requiem.
I forgot they even came out. I was so convinced you were going to go Pokopia and something else, but no, Resident Evil was a massive release. Please tell me about it.
And the funny thing is, like, Resident Evil Requiem came out and then Pokopia came out, and I just got totally obsessed with Pokopia, which I'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
And then having wrapped that, I picked up Resident Evil again, and it's brilliant. I actually bought the Generations trilogy box set for Switch 2, which also includes Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village. And I must say, it really is some pure voodoo wizardry inside the Switch 2 or inside the RE engine or inside something else that allows Resident Evil Requiem to look and run as well as it does on Switch 2. I think in handheld, it's upscaling from like 360p to 1080p on the fly, and that is insane. It's not perfect, obviously. Like I when I'm doing sort of graphic design stuff, I have to, or certainly for clients when they'll send me like a logo or something, and it's like the smallest resolution thing, and I have to upscale stuff. But you can see a few of the telltale signs in like the upscaling, a few of the little smudginesses and stuff, and there's a few frame rate stutters here and there, but it's aiming for 60 frames per second. This is a showpiece game for the PS5 Pro, and it's aiming for 60 frames per second at 1080p on the Switch 2. It's mental. It plays great. It looks stunning. I did, though, buy it on PS5 because it was my intention to play it first on PS5 and then do a second playthrough on Switch 2, because I wanted to like experience it in its fullest, most detailed, most beautifully horrific form, outside of obviously investing in a PS5 Pro. Apparently, Requiem is like the best showpiece for the PS5 Pro yet, but I was tempted.
So you're going to buy one?
No. Already bought one. No, I'm kidding. No, but the game is really great. So Resident Evil Requiem is split between these two concurrent narratives with scaredy cat FBI agent Grace and series veteran and serial kickasser Leon Kennedy. And the two different narratives play out with totally different play styles and perspectives, which you can change if you want. So Grace's sections are first person, slow, tense, proper survival horror, barely any inventory space, not a lot of real ways of fighting things. It is horrible. Leon, on the other hand, is roundhousing monsters left, right, and centre and charging through things like the action hero he is. And it's a really great mix because it does give you the best of both worlds. Because, I mean, in the Resident Evil games that I've played and loved, like Resident Evil 4 and Village and the remakes of 2, 3, and 4, after you get to a certain point of like powerful, which doesn't take, like the early stages are a bit survival horror-y, when you have to choose between like picking up, a herb or some ammo. But then once your inventory gets big enough and, you've got some decent weapons and, a decent amount of ammo, you basically feel like you're in control, and then the fear kind of disappears and you're basically just playing an action game, which is great. But here you get to punctuate those great action horror bits with times of proper survival horror. And it's always such a relief when you close one of Grace's vignettes after struggling through some horrible things, to know that you're just going to be able to blast a bunch of shit out of the way, with Leon's grotesque arsenal. If you played the recent Resident Evil games like Resident Evil Village or, these remakes, then Resident Evil Requiem is going to feel very familiar. I think in a good way. It's a great framework. It's running on a great engine. It all looks and works beautifully. There's not really any new twists on things here that I've experienced yet, anyway, in the way that, like, the parasitic Lagos were in Resident Evil 4, or the werewolves and vampires in Village. This is very much, zombies, infected monstrosities. Obviously, there's some nasty surprises, but nothing like revolutionary for the series. And likewise with the locations, it's like, even when you're not going to, I mean, you actually do go to actual places from previous games, but even aside from those, there's nothing really massively new, like, a hospital facility or underground sewage works or various dark and spooky places. And I think that if you've been a fan of the series since the beginning, then you're going to get more of a kick out of where the story and the setting goes. Like the nostalgic hits of returning to Raccoon City and, familiar locations from the first few Resident Evil games, it wasn't entirely lost on me, because like Resident Evil 4 was my entry point to the series, and I didn't play 2 or 3 until fairly recently in their remake form. But when Leon returns to certain places, the game presents it with a certain sense of reverence, that it means you do feel it, and it is great. But I think, like, I've sort of been spoiled by the fact that the two main Resident Evil games I've played and really loved were Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil Village, both of which were really big departures from what had come before.
Yeah.
Like massively changing up the setting and the enemies and everything. And I know that a lot of this might sound like I'm being a bit negative towards Requiem, saying that it's not massively original and it's a bit familiar. But honestly, when it's executed as well as it is here, it just doesn't matter. Like, it's just so good. The story so far has been suitably silly and B-movie standards, like complete with sassy and wholly unnecessary one-liners in moments of abject tragedy. But it's fun. And, I want to know how this story's going to end. But honestly, like, I just love playing these games. I love collecting things and solving the little puzzles and upgrading your guns. And it just feels so good to play. I love the aesthetic of it all. I love the tone. I love that the game knows it's a game and always keeps things fun and just a bit silly. Like, it is scary. It is spooky, but it's fun. It's like, I mean, it's difficult to talk to you about this because
I wouldn't find it fun.
No,
and I would
you
find
wouldn't.
it scary.
Yeah, but it's like something like 28 Days Later, right?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Scary or just kind of fun?
I don't think it's very scary.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. It's using the horror genre to do like an action thing,
Yeah.
And Resident Evil is it's not like it's out to upset you like something like Silent Hill is, or many other games. It is out to entertain you, and it does. I think where I'm at in the game, I'm about to go into like the final act of the game, and I'm just having such a great time. Like, I often find that as I did with, I guess, Resident Evil 4, Village, 2, 3, 4 remakes, after I finished it, I'd start a new save file straight away, like a new game plus, and I'd go through and try and find all the bits that I'd missed. So I'm excited to see where this game ends and how it lets me do that. And I'm also looking forward to playing through Village again on my Switch, and then tackling Resident Evil 7 for the first time since I played the first half hour in VR and it traumatized me. But I feel a little safer playing it on Switch 2 on a smaller screen and at arm's length. But yeah, I tell you what, I'd love it if they brought the 2, 3, and 4 remakes to Switch 2 as well.
I think it's an absolute banker. I think, honestly, the way Capcom were one of the teams that really supported the first Switch. Like, you could get 4, you could get 1 and 0, you could get the Revelations games. They
even did cloud
5
versions
and 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 5 and yeah.
So you could play pretty much all of the core stuff. So I would be very surprised now that they've got the engine running on the hardware that they wouldn't just say, "Well, here it is, 20 quid, enjoy it." Like, I think I'd
buy another box out of it to go on the shelf. That'd be nice.
Guaranteed release, I would say. Give it a bit of time. They'll call it like Generations Pack 2 or
generation.
Resident Evil Antiquities or some bullshit.
Resident Evil Genesis.
Is that a film? Isn't that one of the films?
Probably. There's been
I think it might be.
of them.
I've seen precisely one of them, the first one, and it was garbage.
But yeah, Resident Evil Requiem is another brilliant Resident Evil game, and it's great.
Well done, Capcom.
What have you played, you big weenie?
So, as I was saying before, I played a game with Georgia. In kind of thinking about it, there's another game I'm going to mention as well that I've also played with Georgia, but it's not new in as much as I've talked about it before, because in boring news, we finished Temtem Swarm for the 4th or 5th time, again, bringing ourselves up to date with achievements and in-game goals, you know, because it just gets new content as it comes along. The proper 1.0 update, I think, is due imminently or very close. It's still on like 0.8 or something like that at the moment. And I'm actually quite excited to get back to it again when the time comes, because I've thought a few times about like picking up Vampire Survivors again, like picking up my save on the Switch.
Yeah.
But it's been so long. The 1 or 2 times I have tried, I've booted it up. I'm like, I don't know which character I'm supposed to be or which map I'm supposed to choose, because there's a lot there. And I put it away. Whereas with Temtem, the game is less expansive, though we've still, I think, played over 100 hours at last check on Steam. And as a result, it's much easier to kind of remind yourself what you're supposed to be doing like after a break, because for all Vampire Survivors does well, and I really love that game, it definitely has an issue with feature creep, which is great if you've been totally and consistently invested, but not so good for someone like me that went very hard and heavy for like a month or two and then just stopped for 4 years or however long it's been. So, like, you know, when the initial goals ran out, I did the base game 100%, I put it away, and then they kept releasing content, and I was like, oh, can't wait to play the Contra stuff, or can't wait to play the Castlevania stuff, and then just didn't play any of it. And for a game that really lives and dies by having at least a base knowledge of your synergies and your builds and the game's lore and everything else, I think I might just have to start fresh if I ever want to do it properly. So who knows? Like, I don't
Halls
know.
of Torment.
I've heard that's good as well from you.
It is good.
Maybe I will. In terms of the new game, though, that me and Georgia have been playing, this was recommended by a friend I work with who is not really a games person. So I was quite surprised, but they knew that I was and said, oh, have you checked this? We've played Strange Horticulture, that you may or may not have heard of.
Yes.
You'd love it. This is a puzzle game available everywhere, although we've been playing via Steam for what it's worth. But I would say, if given the choice, a platform with a touchscreen or a mouse interface is going to be best, because the couch and controller sort of combo we've been using is passable, but it's probably not preferable sort of thing. The setup in Strange Horticulture, or Spooky Plants, as Georgia has been calling it, is that you are bequeathed a sort of arcane florists, and through consultation of a big ever-growing encyclopedia of plants, you must fill orders from local customers requesting like specific flora. And over time, the game gets more interesting as conversations with locals expand an occult storyline, and you begin having to analyze and solve increasingly complex clues to expand your herbarium and push the narrative along. At first, someone will say just like, I need plant A, and it looks exactly like this. And you check the book and you'll find rapid confirmation that, yes, it does indeed look exactly like this. But like a few in-game days deep, and suddenly the descriptions get a lot vaguer. You're having to cross-reference encyclopedia entries to see which species has the slightly sweeter smell, which leaves have a specific number of points, which stem causes a rash, and it's all that sort of stuff. Like, it's admin, but it's fun admin. It's not a million miles away from the Rusty Lake series. That's why Georgia likes it so much, I think. Like in tone, in gameplay, in visual style as well, really. Strange Horticulture is macabre. It's a bit gothic. It takes place in a really nice alternate Victorian-era lake district. So there's kind of places that do exist, and you kind of have like a roughly accurate topography, because part of the game is romping around a kind of an in-game map as well to solve other clues. It's not entirely accurate, but there has been at least one puzzle so far that we would have been able to solve several in-game days earlier than it wanted us to if we'd known a bit more about the nicknames of stone circles in the northwest of England. I found out. Right. So there we go. So if you know that, jump in. I think that's quite cool in a way, like almost a throwback to the old Carmen Sandiego edutainment games, if you ever played those. Because if you haven't, you basically have to solve clues like, you know, you're chasing a criminal. You speak to an airport cab driver that goes, I hear they were excited to photograph a leaning tower, which naturally then has you choosing the menu option to board a plane to
Paris.
Lisbon. We both made the same shit joke. Anyway, I think as well, the game's a tiny bit like Blueprints light as well. Not in its execution, but in that it's another have a pen and paper ready sort of puzzle game. that has rewarded sort of keeping a few notes, cataloguing clues, and sort of massaging your brain to memorize key info about some of the plant genuses that you're kind of exploring. We're very close to the end of the main story now. I think it's probably about 5-6 hours in all, depending on kind of how long it takes you to get through. I feel there are probably a few alternate paths you can take as well, because sometimes you're given the choice to offer like from a selection of plants rather than looking to fulfill like a definite request. And there are very clearly delineated factions across the cast as well. But I think it'll be largely up to Georgia if she wants to dive back in, because it's been her primarily kind of driving this one as I've just sat and helped with puzzles. Games like this, I think, always work well with a partner, because speaking clues and puzzles out loud just feels quite nice. Like it helps kind of get your brain around something if you're just kind of saying it out loud and having someone bounce off of. The Witness, on the other end of the spectrum, I think worked well because they were non-verbal puzzles, and it was built to kick around your own head, because it's harder to say to someone like, right, there's a circle and the circle has to fit inside. It just doesn't work in the same way. Whereas when you're just talking clues out loud, I think it's nice to kind of pick through as a pair. Indeed, like Georgia's beaten all the Rusty Lake Cube Escape games solo, but I'd say she probably enjoyed playing them more when we did it for a second time together, because you get like a level of shared world building. You're kind of like experiencing it together and going, oh, do you remember that from that one? Or do you see that guy's got the hat that we had in the last game? And it's just little things like that. It just makes it like a social experience. So yeah, there's a sequel called Strange Antiquities. Pretty much as soon as we get to the end, I know Georgia will request that is purchased as well. So we'll maybe hear about that one in a future episode if we get to that in due time. But for now, I would like to hear about Pokemon Pokopia, please, because I think I'd probably like it.
You would.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. I'll say that. And I mean, recently I've talked a few times about like Jonathan Dunn games on paper and how effective then they are in practice. Obviously, taking my ego out of the scenario, these are genre mashups that millions of gamers clearly want.
No, they're just for you. They are just for you.
Yeah. I am surprised that it's taken this long for like a game like Pokopia to come out. It feels like there are hundreds of Pokemon spin-off games these days, with the quantity and quality of the mobile ones feeling more and more like shovelware. Although it does feel like quantity and frequency is the bigger priority for the Pokemon company rather than quality in recent years. But Pokopia then has come as a real pleasant surprise for many reasons. Firstly, a cozy game is very, very easy to make as a freemium title that would rake cash in. Put it on mobile too, watch the mob throw money at it. And the Pokemon Company have released several games like that, and I have been guilty of throwing of money. But Pokopia is an entirely premium game. It's not got a sniff of microtransactions, not even talk of DLC at this point, so that's great. Secondly, Pokopia is the first Pokemon game I've played probably since maybe the Game Boy Advance games that feels not only finished, but feels polished.
It's such a damning review, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And they've just become, more and more, laissez-faire with their standards as the years went on. But this is a game that has been user-tested to within an inch of its life to make it as frictionless as possible when you're doing all your Pokemoning. And that's wonderful to see. It's slightly less wonderful knowing that it's not this team making the next Pokemon games.
Yeah.
The mainline ones, which to be fair, from their initial reveal, they look pretty cool. And also I'm very encouraged by the fact that they're giving it a 2027 release date. So they're not rushing it, because they're not even pushing for like holiday 2026, for the Christmas sales. It's not going to be released on Switch as well as Switch 2. It's just Switch 2, take its time. Hopefully they won't fumble the ball again. But the team behind Pokopia are Amiga Force, who make the Warriors games, and more relevantly, the Dragon Quest Builders games, which I haven't played, but from what I've seen and read, Pokopia is basically just a Pokemon reskin of Dragon Quest Builders. So it's building on a very well-established and already finely tuned formula. But it's still to its credit that it handles the Pokemon license as well and carefully as it does. So let me tell you what you do, because on the surface, it's very easy to see Pokopia as, it's just Pokemon plus Animal Crossing, by way of Minecraft.
Yeah.
But that is what it is. It's a huge sandbox game where you can craft and build pretty much anything you want out of blocks and other things. There are 5 separate environments that you will discover as you go through the game, and each one of these is probably about 50 times the size of an Animal Crossing island. So there's a ridiculous amount of space to play with. The core gameplay mechanic revolves around creating the right type of habitats to lure Pokemon back to this post-apocalyptic, desolate world that's sort of been long devoid of humans. It's lovely. And the way you create habitats is by combining the right combination of things together. So it could be a tree and 4 squares of grass to make a tree-shaded grassy habitat, or a flower bed right by the water to make like a hydrated flower thing or whatever. Or it could be just like a certain combination of items, like the right type of bed and sofa and table and light, or a plate with a certain type of food on it, or berries, or punching bags, or toys, or I mean, just literally anything. And there's over 200 different habitats to discover to lure. I think there's 300 Pokemon back to this world. Your central character in Pokopia is a Ditto who transforms into an approximation of his former trainer, which is quite fun. But as you go through the game and meet certain Pokemon, you'll learn different moves through Ditto's transform ability to then allow you to manipulate the environment more and more to create more and more. So you start off with Water Gun. You learn from a Squirtle to then water the dry, arid earth back to life. You learn Leafage from a Bulbasaur to grow new grass around the place. You get Cut from a Scyther to help clear space from useless clutter. You get Rock Smash from a Hitmonchan to allow you to smash through the environment, gather building blocks to craft with, or just to place in other places. You then get more abilities later in the game to give you more freedom in how you play, and it's all just really, really fun. Something that I was very impressed with is the way that they have managed to recreate the feeling of catching a Pokemon in this game. So you get a very exciting buzz when you discover a new habitat, either by chance or by creating it from a hint that you found lying around. And then when you see something just wiggling or rustling around in the space, the way it reveals which Pokemon is there is, you know, in like the Pokemon games when you throw a Pokeball and then it will shake 3 times and then catch it. And the way it does it in Pokopia is the camera just sort of zooms in 3 times before it then bursts out. So it's like, and it's a very, very subtle detail, but it's one that really adds to like then the addictive nature of the game, and it gives you that familiar feeling. There's a story that runs through Pokopia, which was improbably poignant and surprisingly moving and very unexpected, because this is like a withered wasteland that you're exploring. There are no signs of human life anymore, and the Pokemon are trying to work out what happened, maybe find a way to bring the humans back, especially your central Ditto character longing to see their trainer again. And each sort of biome environment that you unlock will have a central quest relating to it as you start to broaden your horizons and work out, just what has happened. One of the coolest things is that you slowly start to realize that you're most likely in a post-apocalyptic version of Kanto, the land from the original Red and Blue games.
Yeah.
And you'll uncover artifacts and journals and bits and bobs that help you piece together that fact. And it's really, really cool. It's nostalgia done right. It's not rammed down your throat, but gently there in the background, just to give those who clock it the warm, fuzzy feelings. And I've got to have a word of praise for the music in this game, which is just gorgeous. It's ambient, sparse and minimalist. It very, very cleverly and subtly uses the notes of certain motifs from like the original Pokemon games to weave then these soundscapes, or just slightly invert it. Like, it's so brilliant, it's so lovely. And then the marvelous thing is that the music then becomes more developed and more familiar the more you start to restore this land back to its original, more recognizable glory. It is just,
that's nice.
Stunning. And it's absolutely lovely. And the story comes to a really great conclusion that is probably like the most impactful and moving story I've experienced in a Pokemon game, which admittedly isn't a massively high bar, but it's just done really, really well. And I mean, for the most part, I was convinced that this was probably the best Pokemon game that I played. Everything just felt wonderful. All of the mechanics are just really tight. There's no friction. Everything has been considered, and it was just utterly delightful. Like the core gameplay loop of exploring and discovering things, and then building habitats, collecting Pokemon, doing little quests, making nice little things, making things look good. It's just so idyllic and lovely. And I was all ready to say that Pokopia is the best cozy game since Animal Crossing. And to be fair, like it's incredibly well made. And I think for a lot of people, it will continue to entertain them for a long time. Downsides I have for this game are very much a me problem.
Yeah.
But I know I'm not alone in it, because for me, just the pacing of the game overall just felt slightly off, because I think this is for the Minecraft audience, those who don't balk at the sheer scale of Minecraft and feel overwhelmed at the idea of even starting such a game. Like there were several times in Pokopia when I almost quit because I felt it was just too big.
Yeah.
But basically every time I cross over into like a new environment, I'd be overwhelmed all over again. And just think, I can't, I don't know what to do with this. Like the reality of the game is that you can contain the gameplay to actually quite small areas. And once I realized that, I felt better about things. But if you look at the size of the maps, like they were meant to be treated like an Animal Crossing island and, slowly customized and created to be your perfect world, like that is folly in this game. I'm sure obviously many, many people will do it, but it's just such a huge task that you think there's no point in even trying to start that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So from that side of things, I felt the game maybe even opened up too much too soon. But then also the post-game stuff is where the game's core concept started to fall apart for me, because the two sides of this like genre mashing came up against each other. Like post-game stuff in a Pokemon game is usually about filling your Pokédex, driven by the desire, got to catch them all. And you can then do that at your own pace, usually. Post-game in an Animal Crossing game, we don't have a post game because it just carefully doles things out at a good pace that keeps you coming back every day to do a little bit more and a little bit more. You feel satisfied with the smaller steps that you take. And the things with Pokopia is that there isn't like a natural point of conclusion you can come to in a day and happily put it down. It's not like you found your fossils, you've talked to the new guest in your town, you've done some fishing, you've paid off a debt. In Pokopia, you can just keep playing and keep doing more until it just won't let you, because you might need to wait for the next day to then go to a randomized dream island to find information on a new habitat then to complete your Pokedex, which is, a couple of other mechanics. Where I think post-game in Pokopia is almost the worst of both worlds, because I wanted to fill out the Pokedex and habitat decks, but there wasn't a way to expedite the process without looking things up online or changing the in-game, changing my Switch clock to speed things up. In Animal Crossing, sometimes it was tempting to do this when I was like, I just really want to get the last couple of fossils for my museum. But there were always lots of other gentle things to be done anyway. Whereas in Pokopia, I knew I wasn't going to set about crafting these incredible worlds that you can do in the game. So I had no reason to play the game other than to fill up the Pokédex and call it a day.
Yeah.
And there aren't the sort of daily events that make logging into Animal Crossing every day a bit of a surprise and a treat. There's a seasonal event running in Pokopia that you can basically complete in one day. So I wasn't fussed that was still ongoing. I know there's going to be more, but I don't know when. I did fill out the Pokédex in the end, including getting the legendary Pokemon that are in the game. It was nice, but it definitely felt like a grind. And because I wanted to go at a quicker pace than the game would let me, because I wasn't enjoying playing the game at the pace of something like Animal Crossing.
Yeah, yeah.
Pokopia is an incredibly good game. If you love Minecraft and the possibility of endless creation, then it's an absolute all-timer. It's not the new Animal Crossing game that I thought it might be for the first few dozen hours, but it's still been just a really good, cozy gaming experience. I don't know if I'm going to keep hold of it or trade it in. I've happily sort of called time on it for now that I've done that. And I'm not sure really what it would take to bring me back to the game, but I don't even know how many hours I put into it. A lot.
85.
Is it?
Yeah, it was. I checked your profile earlier. Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. Well, there we go.
85 hours.
85 hours. That's fine to call it a day there, isn't it? And
yeah. Around the world,
there we go.
Together.
Belgium. Have you ever been?
Belgique. Yes. Yeah, I've toured in Belgium. I've played gigs across Belgium.
Oh, of course you have.
First time in a long time where I can actually say, yes, I have been. Yes, I have experience of several parts of it. Yeah,
I've been through Belgium. I can say that much, but I haven't been to it. But I love the film In Bruges. So
great film.
There's that. It's such a good film.
Really good. Really, really good.
Before we talk about games, do you want to know some facts about Belgium?
Yes, please.
It's the home of the Smurfs, Tintin, Waffles, and the inventor of the saxophone. Belgians also invented French fries.
Yeah.
And Tim Berners-Lee co-developed the World Wide Web with a Belgian inventor, Robert Kallio.
I didn't know that.
So some very, very good things there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Belgium.
Chips and the internet.
Yeah, chips, the internet, Smurfs and waffles. Great. Belgium's a very flat country. In fact, the highest point in Belgium is still lower than the Burj Khalifa, but by over 100 meters.
Yeah.
And Belgium also has over 3,000 castles, which makes for the highest number of castles per square meter in a country in the world, which is cool. And also, crucially, it can only be known as a Brussels sprout if it is a horrible miniature cabbage from the capital city of Belgium. Otherwise, it should technically be known as a sparkling chug nugget.
You're not a Sprout fan then?
I can hate them.
I love them. I love Brussels sprouts.
I know you do. I realised that as I was writing it and thought, fuck it.
It doesn't matter. I mean, most people hate them. I mean, I think generally I'm probably in the minority of someone who's like, I really love them. Anyway, do you want to know about Belgian games,
Chris? What of games?
What of games? Belgium's games industry is definitely on the smaller side, which I was reasonably surprised by, given the strength of some of its neighbours that we have already visited. What is there is quite interesting. Like, there's a handful of studios carving out their own little niches, and then looming over everything is one absolute monster that I'll come to at the end, which you can't really avoid. Starting smaller, Rogue Side are a cool little studio. They made the Guns, Gore and Cannoli series of games. More recently, they also made the Warhammer tie-in Shooters, Blood and Teeth, and they're all kind of loud, brash, side-scrolling run and gun kind of things. Absolutely built from a love of arcade games like Metal Slug. They are worth a punt if you're into games like that, if you like arcade experiences. Lots of over-the-top cartoon violence, lots of explosions. If you want something a bit softer, they also had moderate hits with the Hidden Through Time, hidden object games. So they're a studio, more people may have interacted with than might realise. Then we come to a studio called Exine. That's Exiin. I don't know where that name comes from, who are best known for Ari and the Secret of Seasons, which is a sort of double-A take on classic Zelda. I gave this one 1 hour, because I thought I might play it for the show, before dropping it, because it was just janky enough to really rankle. But you can't knock the ambition, If you remember, this is going way, way back. I played a sort of Mario 64 knockoff on the Switch called Poi, and it basically did all the stuff that Mario 64 did, right down to the stage structure, the enemy design, the lot, and yet it just wasn't quite there in any area. And Ari is basically to Ocarina of Time what Poi was to Mario. The developer I've read on the Steam forums is currently trying to reboot and remaster the game in his spare time after leaving it dormant for years. So maybe if it does see kind of significant set of tweaks and upgrades, I might give it another go. It's been in my library for God knows how long. I didn't want to play any more of it. I'll say that. Beyond those, you've got a scattering of smaller indie projects that don't necessarily break through in a massive way, but do add a bit of texture to the scene, I guess. The best example is probably Studio Waterzooey with their Please Touch the Artwork games that I know that you enjoyed.
Yeah, I did.
And, their puzzle games built around interacting with modern art. I've yet to play any of them, despite being a big fan of Mondrian's work that the first game particularly really draws from, so might come to it at some point. But really, any conversation about games in Belgium inevitably leads to Larian Studios.
Yeah.
Because Larian are not just Belgium's biggest studio, they're one of the most important RPG developers in the world right now. Starting out a bit more humbly with the Divinity series in the early 2000s, they spent years building up their expertise in that very specific style of quite dense, systems-driven role-playing games. Wasn't always glamorous stuff, and it certainly wasn't always hugely successful, or popular with everyone, but it did lay the groundwork for what would eventually become Divinity Original Sin and its sequel. Those games were the real turning point for Larian because they were Kickstarter backed, they were community driven, they were unapologetically complex, and they found an audience. They trusted their players to engage with the systems rather than be kind of shepherded through a softer experience. And then, of course, that leads directly to Baldur's Gate 3, which was a big hit a few years back. Absolutely not the target audience for that game. I won't embarrass myself by trying to explain how it relates to Dungeons and Dragons or fits in any sort of wider timeline, really. But I will say that it seemed to break through, not just with RPG heads, but also the wider gaming mainstream in a way that seemed to genuinely surprise the entire industry back in 2023. So well done to them. Well done. Of this limited spread or any others you might have dug up, what exactly did you play this month?
I've been playing Is This Seat Taken by Belgian studio Potty Games, or Potty Potty. It could be, actually. One of my favourite things to do is if somebody says something in a message and I get the excuse to make the joke potato. I always do that in text because it's very funny to me. So yeah, Potty Studio. I remember seeing Is This Seat Taken featured on a Nintendo Indie Direct. I think earlier, I don't know, fairly recently. It wasn't in the last one, it was in the previous one, I think. And it definitely looked a bit of me. A gentle puzzle game about getting things in the right order. It's very simple. You'll be given a scenario, say an empty cafe, and then a series of people you need to fit on the chairs and tables to fulfill their various personal criteria. Some may want space, some may want to sit with their friends, some may want to listen to music, some may want a quiet space. Some people have forgotten to shower. Some hate bad smells. Some want to be sat with a view. Some want to be in a corner. And then you have to fiddle about and work out where everyone needs to go to fulfill all the criteria and keep everybody happy. And you check it off and you move on to the next level and do it all again. It's very pleasantly animated. It's got a lovely minimalist art style that's cute and expressive while also being easily readable and navigable. The more the game goes on, obviously, the more complex the scenarios become and the more complex the people's needs are. I particularly enjoyed a scenario that was in a park, and you had to fit various people in that were having like a picnic, or there were some people then who were listening to music, some people that wanted to dance but didn't have music, so they had to be near them. But then also you had to control the street lights around the park to move a group of moths away from people who hated bugs.
Yeah.
So, that was good. There was a nice series of levels on a boat as well, where you had to balance out people that wanted to have like a boat party and then people that didn't want to be splashed.
Fair enough.
Nice as well.
Fair enough.
It's a really nice idea. And for what it is, it's really well executed. It's pleasant puzzling. I don't know if it's the sort of puzzle game for everyone. For me, I really love logic puzzles, like Picross, where, you work things out very methodically and specifically. And with this, I felt like I just had to try and put things in and shuffle them around and work it out like that, which, is obviously absolutely fine. But I didn't get that same sort of satisfying feeling when it clicked and I got everything in its right place. But it's really good. I played it on my phone, actually, and it was pretty cheap. There's not really much more to say about it. It's it had an idea and it does it quite well.
Good job.
It's one to look out for in a sale, I'd say, if you want a nice little puzzle game. Yeah, very gentle, very nice. Well done, Potty.
Gentle, Potty gentles.
What did you play, Krista?
After I dropped Ari, I played a game I've already mentioned by Rogueside. I played the first Guns, Gore and Cannoli game because the title made me laugh.
Yeah.
It is one of those indie games that has a slightly larger profile than might otherwise be deserved by virtue of it getting a boutique physical release back when that was still a relative novelty. So I'd had it on a shelf for the PS4 for a long time via its strictly limited games release, and then eventually it came to the Switch via the same publisher, and I sold my still sealed PS4 copy for a relative honeypot and swapped to my collector's platform of choice, and that is the version I've been playing. As I mentioned in my preamble, this is very much a game made in the image of games like Metal Slug. Both games are run-and-gun shooters. They've got expressive character art, cinematic set pieces, all that sort of stuff. Both are very arcadey.
Run, Gun and Cannoli?
It's called Guns, Gore and Cannoli. And for a long while, when I was writing these notes, I kept typing cannelloni, which is different.
That is different, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Metal Slug and Guns, Gore and Cannoli are very arcadey in their setup and their challenge, even if Cannoli only ever existed on home platforms. Both two are works of satire, you could say. Metal Slug is basically a send-up of kind of global conflict to poke at the international military-industrial complex by way of very bombastic, cartoony violence and oversized tanks and weapons of war and everything else. Guns, Gore and Cannoli is more of a genre satire. It's riffing on monster movies and gangster stereotypes. There's Godfather jokes in the intro video, all that sort of stuff. Naturally, there's also zombies, because everything has zombies, it feels. I'll admit I didn't pay a great deal of attention to the story cutscene at the start of the game. I didn't think it was really going to tell me that much, even if I have to say the animation itself is pretty well done. Instead, I was happy to just start the game quickly, learn the controls, and then get blasting. That's the experience you want, really. Using a range of weapons, you've got a pistol, machine gun, shotgun, revolver. You need to fight through the ever-encroaching undead. And Cannoli is fun. It's reasonably well-paced. It's not too tough, at least on earlier difficulty modes. But I still spent an awful lot of my playtime, similar to your criticisms of Cult of the Lamb last month, thinking, I could be playing Metal Slug every time, because it's the type of experience that maybe if I hadn't played Metal Slug so recently, both at the arcade club when I visited, whenever I last went, and also via its excellent Evercade port that's, quite new, I might have just shrugged it off and not really thought about it. But because that memory is still very fresh, it made a lot of the fragments that I might have otherwise lost to time sort of niggle a little bit more. And it's things like in Guns, Gore and Cannoli, whilst you could argue that the art style is more befitting of the year it released in 2015, it's kind of got that bendy flash style live animation. It's just not as careful as having nice pixel art like the Neo Geo classic. It's still good. I don't think it's bad at all, but it's nowhere near some of the most kind of offensive and egregious examples you see of this style still today in indie trailers that shit out on Steam every single day if you obsessively scan new releases like I do. But it just doesn't have the craft of good pixel art because it takes more effort to do that well. I think, it's a hard picture to paint with words as well. And this is more of like a gameplay thing. But if you imagine these scenarios too, in Metal Slug, if an enemy, for instance, is set to run back and forth across the screen, you can assume relatively safely that you should be able to kind of shoot at the enemy as they come towards you, jump up in the air so it runs underneath, and then shoot the other way. And you can kind of learn the attack pattern like that. But in Guns, Gore and Cannoli, the same type of enemy type would run towards you. You jump up, assuming it's going to go past you, and you can shoot again. And then it would just immediately sort of just turn and change direction straight away. So you just land back on its head and take damage because it's kind of been programmed, I guess, to just follow your character as opposed to follow a path. And again, it's just not made with as much love as stuff that's come before it. With skill, I'm sure all of this could be mitigated, but it strays away enough from the unwritten rules of the arcade that it just didn't feel quite right. And I'm not saying, like, as a purist, that games shouldn't be allowed to deviate from templates or distance themselves from inspiration. But I think it is clear when this sort of thing is like a misstep as opposed to a deliberate design choice. So yeah. Despite being collected on the same cartridge, I didn't get a chance to play the game's sequel. From screenshots and reviews, it seems like it's more of the same, but with like a bit of extra polish here and there. Ditto the more recent Warhammer tie-in Shooters, Blood and Teeth, which very much seems to be the same run and gun framework, just with new art dropped in over the top. It reviewed quite well. People seem to really like that one, so I don't know, might try it at some point. I liked Guns, Gore and Cannoli, but I didn't love it. It's not a pastiche, but even with its tweaks, it's also not unique enough to really merit playing over its inspirations. I keep coming back to it. It's Metal Slug with a graphics filter. It really does feel like it's that sort of setup. And going even further back, you could even argue that earlier 2D run and guns did more with this formula as far back as like Gunstar Heroes on the Mega Drive or Contra Hardcore. Developers are able to iterate on this sort of thing because they were doing it in 1993. You can do stuff with it if you want to. And they're doing stuff with it now, modern games as well. Like Cuphead is essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
If you want to play Cuphead, it's got parries and combos and everything that makes it more modern while still very much being inspired by these kind of arcade classics. So yeah, Guns, Gore and Cannoli is content to be solidly good, I'd say, in its field, but never really pushes the boundaries in any direction. So I think both of our games this month are like, they're pretty fine. They do a job. You'll probably have a nice time if you play them, if you're in the mood for that. And then you probably won't remember them tomorrow.
I should have probably just played Baldur's Gate 3, hadn't we?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I would have turned into an absolute RPG sicko if I'd done that, but
maybe.
I don't
we'll never
think
know.
I would have had the 7 million hours to learn it or get used to it or anything else. I would have got to start making a character sheet and then just never progress from there. I genuinely believe.
You get to customize their dong.
Cyberpunk as well.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
No, I think you can in both. I think they both have extensive penile curating tools. It's future of gaming.
Where are we going next, Chris?
We are going to China. We visited Taiwan before. So
Yes.
we've been over that area of the world, but we are moving to kind of the big one, the big country.
Yeah.
And we're going to find some games, hopefully, that are interesting.
I imagine there's many games in China.
I think there definitely are, but I think it is also one of those regions where there are many games that are not localized. So I think they have a big industry, but especially with like RPGs and things like that, but not necessarily ones that have kind of made it across to kind of, you know, the Western world in terms of like English language. So we'll see, but I'm excited.
Interesting.
I'm excited.
Well, there we go. That was Belgium and its games and some other ones that we talked about that we played. What have you been playing at the moment? Tell us on social media at O3C Games on everything. Have you got a country that you would like us to go to look at their games? Then let us know. Come to our Discord if you want. Go to o3c.games, check out all the shit on there and find a Discord join link and do that as well, you pricks.